Legally married rapper Cardi B is expecting a baby with her boyfriend, but her estranged husband could be on the hook for child support. We have new developments in the case of Romeca Meeks, the 31-year-old Chicago mother that was gunned down in September. And beloved talk show host Jimmy Kimmel Show has been canceled indefinitely. We're talking censorship and what this could mean for you and your right to free speech. Cardi B announced her pregnancy recently, but did you know there might be legal implications for her husband Offset? Who's going to jail? Who's going to have to pay child support? Is Offset about to be super mad because he's going to have to take care of this other man's baby? Today, let's welcome in my friend and our legal expert, trial attorney Sue Ann Robinson. Sue Ann, how you doing today?
I am doing all right. How are you, Queen?
I am beautiful. So before we get into this, because there's going to be no Cardi slander, I do need to know, are you Team Barty or not?
I'm very much Team Belcalis.
Team Belcalis. So, you and I were talking off camera, and apparently there is a law that exists somewhere, or there was a law stating if you get pregnant by someone outside of your marriage, but you are still in a legal marriage, then the husband, your legal marriage on paper partner, has some sort of responsibility to this.
Sure, absolutely. What you're referring to is called the presumption of paternity. That's done to make sure that the child, when they're born with a marriage open, that they have a legal father figure, that someone is going to be responsible for them. So in fact, Offset would have to disavow paternity, and then Stefan Diggs would have to establish himself as the biological father, because the papers on the divorce have not dried. So technically they're still married. So he would have, Offset would be granted parental rights and responsibilities. He would have financial responsibilities. I don't anticipate that being an issue, because I don't anticipate that Cardi will request financial resources from Offset for the new baby. She don't need it.
I mean, it could be for years of pain and suffering. I mean, it could be her last gotcha moment. Who knows?
Right. I mean, as it stands at this moment, he would have parental rights. He would have financial responsibility. The three of them, Stefan, Cardi, and Offset, could sign a document to basically disavow Offset as the legal father and establish Stefan as the biological father. If that becomes necessary, that could be done. I've only seen this issue because I don't practice in family law, but I've seen it affect wrongful death cases or personal injury cases where next of kin is an issue. And if the person passed away, but they were legally separated from the person, then how do you handle that? The legal spouse still is the next of kin, along with if they had children, if they didn't have children. So it's important to let that ink dry and get that paperwork before, be outside.
Before you be outside. And we've heard of this happening a lot. A couple will split up 10 years down the line. They just never did the divorce paperwork. Someone passes away. Both people are repartnered. However, that person that is on paper, they're the beneficiary. They get all of the things. And I've seen, and I'm sure you've seen this happen as you practice too. I've seen someone have to move out of their home and have their things sold because their partner passed away, but their partner did not legally cover and protect them and their assets. So let's hope Cardi and Offset and her new boyfriend, her new child's father, do this, because we know she's told us on national television, she and her boyfriend are accepting the baby. Where in the heck does this law make sense? I always like to know the history behind the law.
I think historically the idea was if a child is born and the mother is married to someone, you want to make sure that the child is going to have financial support, legally have someone that's obligated to support the child. So the child isn't just out here with no support. I think that's kind of the foundation of it in situations where the wife or spouse could be abandoned and things like that. They want to make sure that the child still has financial support. So the only way that the legal father could get out of that is if they contest and say, hey, I'm not the father. I shouldn't be being put on child support. I don't need, custody. I don't need any of those rights or the responsibilities because I'm not the father. Then the court would order paternity, and then they would have to go through that process. If there was a question, if Cardi was saying, I'm not sure, or if, Offset was saying he's not sure, then that would be the
Okay.
process they would have to go to. But because everyone knows what everyone knows, Cardi said, she separated from him a year ago. She also had a baby with him last year, but that's neither here nor there.
Okay. Huh. And when we all saw the bump at her most recent trial, it was assumed that she was pregnant, but you never, we ain't trying to be up in women's uteruses. But now that she's confirmed it and she's confirmed who the child's father was, can she face any sort of, we know for some, it's a moral dilemma because you're still legally married to your partner. Offset has been a known cheater in their relationship. She's been quite vocal about that. She's been on the press run, with this new album. That's why she's in the news now and we're talking about her. Mm-hmm. Is there any realm of possibility, and I know this is just guessing, where Cardi's like, I actually do want Offset to pay? Is there any realm of possibility where that could hold a candle in court, even though we know she's admitted who the father is?
Yeah, I think that if in some strange universe, legally, he is the father. So
legally, he's the father. Yes. As of today, even though she's told us.
There is a presumption of paternity because he is her legal husband. She has disavowed that publicly in the media. So it wouldn't go super far in court because her own words would be used against her. But if that was the case, then Offset would have to contest it and say, hey, I want to have paternity because I was watching the news and I seen the post just like y'all did. It's not my baby.
Contested paternity. Mm-hmm. And I'm assuming, with child support, we talk a lot about child support, marriage, remarriage, co-parenting, step-parenting on this channel. And, with the thing with the courts I see is they want to make sure that the state and the government is not responsible for caring for your child. So they have to put the paternity somewhere, correct?
Yes. Yeah. And it's possible that I doubt it will happen in Cardi's case because I'm sure she will have a lot more control. But in an everyday person like myself, anyone out on the street.
You are not an everyday girl, ma'am. I'm just seeing you on TV.
Go have a baby while legally married. Your husband, your legal husband, is going to be listed as the father on the birth certificate until that court process is taken care
of. Okay. That's a really strong case of get back, too, because I think about men that have children outside of relationships and outside of marriages. Isn't that an okie doke if a woman's like, you got to take care of this one, too, because it's legally yours? Not giving you guys any ideas out there. But Sue Ann just told us that, ladies, you're covered in this case.
Yeah.
The baby's covered. All right. Trial attorney Sue Ann Robinson, thank you so much. And we look forward to coming back and speaking with us about the next case that's on Naja. Today, we're back talking to true crime OG Steph Watts, our investigative journalist, and he has some updates on the Romeca Meeks case. Romeca was recently buried, so she has been laid to rest. But this case is anything but. Developments are coming every single day, and Steph is fired up because he just got some very disturbing news, and he's breaking the story here with us first. Steph Watts, True Crime OG, welcome back.
Thanks for having me. I want to just send out my condolences to Romeca's family. I know yesterday was a sad day for them. I think it was her when they laid her to rest. Unfortunately, also, it was a day that Carlos chose to release not favorable videos of Romeca, which to me is just absolutely appalling. Why we had to see those, her screaming at him, you know what I mean? To me, it's just unfathomable that would happen. But that's not the worst of it, Naja. What I'd like to say is this. First of all, Holly Johnson's, real name is Kadesha. Is it? Am I saying?
It's pronounced Quadasia.
Quadasia Johnson. Quadasia Johnson. So anyone that changes their name or acts under an alias for me is initially a problem, but that's not what I'm here to talk about. What I'm here to talk about is her CCL, her gun, and her gun license are not being revoked. She will be able to legally continue to carry a weapon, and she will be able to continue to be licensed under the CCL. Now, this is not the responsibility of the Chicago Police Department. Okay, if you want to know a little bit more about this, Naja, I'd love to quickly just dive into this.
Yeah, educate us. Yeah.
Right, because I know people are going to be outraged at this, as I am, and I want them to certainly make sure that their outrage is directed accordingly. So, in Chicago and Illinois broadly, CCL, concealed carry license, is issued and regulated at the state level, not by the Chicago Police Department. Okay, so the ISP, the Illinois State Police, are the agencies with the legal authority to use, suspend, or revoke an individual CCL, like in the case of Holly Johnson, aka Quadacia Johnson, aka Holly Johnson. So here's how it works now. If someone is arrested and charged with a certain crime or deemed a danger to themselves or others, law enforcement, including Chicago PD, the Cook County Sheriff's Department, or the prosecutors, can file an objection to notify ISP. The case is then reviewed by the Conceal and Carry Licensing Review Board, which can remove, revoke, or the denial. So under the Illinois State Police, ultimately the ISP, the Illinois State Police, make the final decision to revoke or suspend the license. So in short, the ISP can officially revoke a CCL through local law enforcement like the CPD, which can trigger the process. But here's the problem. In this case, Naja, as we know, she wasn't charged. So we know that she blatantly pulled out a gun and said she was in fear for her life, and shot and killed Romeca Meeks. Her license is not going to be revoked, and she will continue to be able to carry a weapon. This is a recipe for disaster as far as I'm concerned. I'm incredibly upset about it. I've spoken to people and my sources who are, their hands are tied. There's nothing that they can do. Had she have been charged, Naja, obviously this would be a different conversation. But again, she wasn't charged and hasn't been charged and should have been charged. And she wasn't, and she can continue to carry a weapon. And we've got to remember, he has children and she has children. So those children will be around a weapon. And obviously, to me, I grew up around guns. I'm Canadian. Guns is part of my culture. She is not a responsible gun user and should not have a weapon. And I'm telling you right now, mark my words, this is not going to be the last time that she's going to fire that gun at somebody.
That's quite a strong statement, Steph.
Yeah.
It does seem irresponsible. Now, at this point, we don't know where exactly she got her CCL license. Was it in her home state? Was it her city, Milwaukee?
It would no. Let me correct you. It would have to be licensed in the state of Illinois, because
Why do you say that?
Because she's carrying the gun in that state, so you have to be.
Well, some CCLs, that you can get. Like I read in the state that she was probably granted the license in, whether it was Chicago or it was over, where she is from, Milwaukee. They do allow you to take a course. Like you have to take a course to get the permit for a CCL.
Okay, you know what? I stand corrected. So I told you and your viewers. So by the way, I got to tell you, Naja, you got a great group of people. Like the comments, I think everyone's. First of all, you guys have been really favorable to me. I really appreciate that. I don't get everything right.
They love you, Steph. They love you.
Listen, I do my best, and I love them. I think they're great. Like honestly, the comments are great. People are sympathetic. It's like really nice to engage in intelligent conversations. So guys, keep them coming. I love all you guys. Great. So let me put a call to action out to you guys. I just told you how it would be if she was licensed in the state of Illinois. So I don't know where her license is. So I stand. Let's find out where her license is from. Okay. But all of that is irrelevant because right now, no matter where it's from, they're not revoking her license and she's going to be allowed to continue to carry a gun. So
in all 50 states at this point.
Right. And yes, so it's, look, that's, it's neither here nor there, whatever state she's licensed in. What I need to find out is, I still believe that because the weapon was in the state of Illinois and operated and fired in Chicago, I still believe that ISP has the power to revoke a license. But again, they can't because she wasn't charged. And she said it was self-defense. Now, from the videos that you've sent me and some of the witnesses that you've played, and I know you're going to get some of this stuff posted up in the next couple of days. Naja, I know some, you and I have been listening to witness testimonies. Some of them have asked that you not play them, but I know you're going to work around that by reaching out to them directly, which is going to be great. And, some of the people on your platform have been saying that, their comments on what they witnessed from the points that. So it's been really interesting to see. But where I'm going with this, and in conclusion, is I do not believe that this was a case of self-defense.
Mm-hmm.
100%. This was not a case of self-defense. And Quadisha, am I saying that right?
Cordasia.
Quadesia Johnson, aka Holly Johnson, should have been charged for the murder of Romeca Meeks. And that's my statement, and I'm sticking to it.
Now, when we look at, because you've been doing this for a very long time. I'm just now learning about the crime aspect of all of this. So looking at the charges that we can speculate, because it could have been, is it first degree murder, second degree manslaughter? Obviously, there's no charges here, but even a charge of manslaughter would have, because she recklessly did endanger and take this woman's life, whether she felt like she was in fear for her life or not. It's been stated that Romeca, there's been no reports that she had a weapon, none whatsoever. And obviously the police know way more than they're releasing to us. I don't know if they're gathering ring footage. Have any of your sources said anything, Steph, about them furthering an investigation, or have they just moved on to the next story?
Well, I think it's a bit of both. I know that, they're certainly watching your videos and some of the videos that are being posted. They're familiar with the people involved in this cases and their histories. So one thing I'd like to say, Naja, is anybody involved in this case, if you've committed crimes in the past, if you have some kind of criminal history, I would be very, very concerned if I were you. That's all I'm going to say.
That sounds like you just fired off a warning shot.
Well, I wasn't the one that was firing the warning shots, but all I'm trying to say is, your criminal history and your criminal past is not unknown to the investigators in this case, and they will look into serious
Everybody.
other crimes. Everybody, they have to. Everybody, you know what I mean. So but look, I don't know, but I can certainly find out what they would have suggested to the state attorney's office. What can I say? What the charges would be? I can find out. I don't know, because you know what, Naja, it didn't matter because there's no charges, right? So what's the point of looking into something that doesn't exist? The likelihood. The third thing I wanted to talk to you about, and it's a Friday. I call it fuck around Fridays. Fuck them up Fridays, right? I'm here to fuck it up, drop it on the weekend, and then I'll see you Monday. The other thing I wanted to say to you is, I don't believe that they're going to pursue charges, and it's not, again, people, it's not the CPD. It's like, they're like you said, Chicago, there's a lot going on, and there's a lot of other crimes, and the investigators in this case, I think, are incredibly frustrated with their inability to get this charged. And
it's so interesting because when it came down to Jussie and that whole hoax or whatever that was, they pulled out all the big guns and the entire team was called out. So there are ring cameras.
In that case, I think, I don't know if your viewers are aware that was a story I worked on. I'm close with Olambola, the guys at the center of the Jussie Smollett case. As are you, I introduced him to you. You had him on your podcast with George Santos. I love them. They're great guys, But this,
and we probably should bring them here just to talk. If the audience wants that.
We were talking about that. Well, because especially, I know we've gone off topic, but it's Fridays.
We are
Fridays. With the release of the new Netflix special. I saw
that. So let's talk about murder. For those of you that are not familiar, hold on, Steph, 1 second. Let's talk about murder and the degrees of it for those of you that are not familiar, as I wasn't up until this case. So first degree murder, you premeditated to take somebody's life. It was willful, deliberate. You meant to do it. It was planned. You thought about this. You set it up.
Premeditation, right, is first degree murder, correct?
So was this first degree? Did she premeditate to go and take that woman's life that day?
I think that would be a difficult charge to get, because
absolutely,
it was this was the perfect storm of a terrible situation. I think if premeditation, we've seen it in, again, the example that I use is the Kwame Wilson, who murdered his mother, Yolanda Holmes, on the Upper West Side of Chicago. He planned it out. Brought in another person to go through with the murder. He told them how to get into the apartment. So that's a planned out premeditation. And that's a tough charge to get in.
So it's a very tough charge. So then let's move on to second degree murder. Second degree is unplanned intentional murder, a killing that was intended to cause harm, but was committed impulsively without premeditation. So I'm thinking if you went to go and rob a bank and you shot somebody and they died, you didn't go in with the intention, you were committing another crime. That sounds like a unplanned intentional murder. So it's also depraved heart. It's a killing caused by an individual's extremely reckless and dangerous conduct, showing a depraved indifference to human life, even without intending to kill.
Right.
Depraved indifference.
And honestly, I felt like second degree could have been a possible charge in this, but I think the mitigating factor to that is the fact that she had a restraining order against Romeca. So this is great that we're doing this. So I'm just playing devil's advocate in this, and what the probably the Cook counties, I haven't spoken to them, but probably what they're thinking is this is good. Could do the next one.
Yeah. Okay. So third degree, which is rarely used in the state of Illinois and not too much these days, but we're still going to go over it. Third degree murder in jurisdictions that recognize it, which I don't think Illinois does. Third degree murder may cover killings where there was less intent or planning than in second degree murder, such as a killing during a reckless act that doesn't fall under first degree. The varying definitions are the existence and exact definition of third degree murder vary significantly by state. So we can skip over that, Steph. Let's go to manslaughter, because this looks like a manslaughter case. You have two different types of manslaughter charges that one can get. They can get voluntary or involuntary. So with voluntary, it's a killing committed in the heat of passion or due to sudden provocation where the intent to kill was not entirely justified. That is voluntary. Right. That is voluntary. So then before we get into the discussion, Steph, let's talk about involuntary. Involuntary is an unintentional killing that results from criminal negligence or recklessness. So Steph, what do you think, involuntary or involuntary?
Okay, let's just put on our acting hats. If I was a detective in this case, I would have probably gone to the Cook County's state attorney's office with voluntary manslaughter. I think that's best fitting in this situation. But this is one thing. I spoke to my source, and people are going to be angry about this, but they have to understand one of the deciding factors in not charging Miss Johnson is
the girl had the restraining order.
Well, no, but they also have to look ahead and say, and this is a quote from my source. Would a jury of 12 people convict her on a charge? And, remember, there's a lot, like in this situation, unfortunately, the victim's past would come out, the tumultuous relationship. And again, that restraining order and her version of the story, which is, I was 15 feet away and I was in fear for my life, which to me is a contradictory statement. 15 feet away and in fear for your life to me is, I have a problem with that. But, Romeca's dead. She's not there to tell her side of the story. We've got video accounts. But in conclusion, my long-winded comment is that they felt they would not be able to convince a jury of 12 people that this was voluntary manslaughter. Therefore, they didn't charge her.
And we do know the officers, how they work. They're not going to take on a case that they don't feel like they can win. So clearly there's something compelling them and saying, this one's not in the bag. We don't have this. They know information that we simply do not have just yet. And we are working on getting. But we also know, Steph, we've heard from a witness, and the witness's voice was recognized from the crime scene video, the video that went viral, how we found out about this case. She did an interview with circulating the net right now. We've talked to other witnesses and we're working on getting statements from them. We're just still confirming, because we do like to confirm things and verify before we put anything here on Naja News. But one thing that we know from the three witnesses that we have heard from. At this point, nobody saw what happened before the
Right.
incident. Everybody got there when the altercation
Mhm.
was already
Right.
happening.
100%. Right. And I think I liked that witness because she was clear on her entry point. And I always tell her, and we had this conversation before, and I want to just explain this to everyone who's involved, because everyone's really good. You guys are great web sleuths, really good
Yes,
information.
they're
So,
giving us information.
right, but
Absolutely.
you're right. So what's missing, and I think what we don't have an actual eyewitness that said, I was there, I saw Romeca get into her car, I saw this happen. Right. There's a really big piece of the puzzle that's missing. And that information, that piece of the puzzle is being filled in by Carlos and by, Miss Johnson. So,
Right.
again, the witnesses are great, but always remember where they came in. I think the woman said she got off the bus, and
Right.
so, right.
And the other two witnesses that we have, they also saw it
Mhm.
when the altercation had happened. And
Mhm.
they saw it from a different vantage
Mhm.
point than the witness video that's out there. So I want to talk a little bit. You've worked a lot with witnesses, Steph.
Mhm.
And some witnesses can be entirely compelling and believable because they're emotional.
Mhm.
And then we find out that they may not be credible,
Mhm.
which is always why I wait to reserve opinion, because I've heard
Mhm.
some very compelling stories. And then we find out that a witness was offered a deal, or they took a plea, or something else happened.
Mhm.
Where are we with understanding how credibility works? And not just in this case, but how do we know to believe a witness that sounds compelling? Because we look at the Central Park Five, great example. The witness swore that they were guilty, and then come to find out they were not, and they spent 20 years of their lives or so locked up because of witness statements. So,
Right.
what gives us a compelling, credible witness, Steph?
Well, that case that you reference is, I think we're opening up Pandora's box, because we're getting into systemic racism, right? And historic racism, because that victim was white, and I'd love to talk about that for another day. I know what you're
Absolutely,
saying,
we
but
sure
let's
have to. Let's
yeah,
go
let's
there.
let's stick to this case. And again,
Okay.
the problem is that Ramik is dead, okay, and we have two witnesses who are obviously going to corroborate their story, right? And the story is, I had a restraining order, which she did, and I fired in self-defense. Is anybody buying that story? Not really. Okay, really,
It's
none
a
of us
tough.
are buying
It's a
that
tough
story.
buy.
Right. Yeah, even everyone on, I'm reading the comments, I'm looking at everything, and people are entitled to their opinion. What I would like to do, what I would challenge them is, as you know, I was one of the executive producers of Lie Detector on A&E, and I'm currently working on a new show, Lie Box, where we're going to strap people up, and we're gonna give them a lie detector test, a polygraph test. I would like to put Miss Johnson give her a polygraph test. I would like to poly Miss Johnson, but again, the police department don't have the time and the resources to do that, because they didn't have what you said. Like there was, if there was a really credible eyewitness that was like, I was there the whole time, and
Yeah.
Miss Johnson was the aggressor in the situation, that this would be a
Case
different
closed. Case closed.
case closed.
Because
You
just
know what?
because you have a restraining order against a person,
Mhm.
if they are not aggressing you, you do not have the right. Now,
Mhm.
and this is kind of where we get into semantics, because if you have a restraining order against a person, you've been granted that, you've been able to prove that they've made threats against you, you are in fear. If they do come into your space and you have to retaliate using whatever you can, if you have a gun, if you have your hands, a baseball bat, mace, then, at what point is the person that's being violated responsible to flee? I know now, I'm pretty sure, I think Quadeja wishes she just would have gotten in that car or driven away and let Carlos and his child's mother duke it out, because she
Or
still had her 5-month-old baby in the car.
gotten in the car and locked the door. To me, that altercation was between Carlos and Romeca. Okay, that
And
was
her baby was in the car.
their
So,
issue. She had a child in
right.
the car. Again, and one
Who
thing,
she still does not have back yet, by the way, because
right,
DCFS did take the child because
right,
violence happened in front of
right.
them.
Now that's it's gonna be an interesting. That's gonna be another whole conversation, because it's more than likely that Carlos will probably end up by getting custody of that child. I think the grandmothers are going to fight for custody, but he is the father.
Yeah.
And this is going to be, listen, this is your area. But one thing I wanted to
No.
add to this conversation is, and when my source was telling me this morning, is that we have to remember there's cases in Chicago where people have weapons that aren't licensed, that are unlicensed, no CCLs, illegal weapons, and they've murdered people and have not been charged. So, it's again, I think it's what's important is the conversation that we're having, the conversations to come out of this. This is not okay, right? This sets a terrible precedent as far as I'm concerned, saying, just if you're in an argument, you can pull your gun out and shoot somebody. I want everybody to know that I know that looks like the case, but please, it's not, it's the wrong thing to do. And honestly, you know what? If I saw Miss Johnson coming, I'm going to run because she's got a gun and a license to kill, apparently. So if you see Miss Johnson, I think I would be, a little bit careful around her. She could shoot and claim it's self-defense. And, again, I know I'm being hard on her, but I'm using this as an example of the laws. The laws need to change. Look, the police's hands are tied. Trust me, they're frustrated. The DA's office, the state attorney's office, feels like they can't get a charge on this. They won't get it in front of a jury. They've got 150 cases of people with illegal weapons in the same situation that they weren't able to bring charges. So, the system is broken. And I think that's why, I'm so interested in talking about the case because, but one thing that's interesting, and I have to, this is going to be a very controversial statement, but I want people to understand that I have evidence to back that up. If you're a white person in Chicago and you kill a black person, you're going to be charged. And I have an example of one where there was an individual who shot, and I can get you more information on this, two young black men who were allegedly taking his bike. He'd had issues with them before. He shot and killed one or both of them. This is a fairly big story, and we can maybe jump into this next week. He was charged. He was charged.
He was charged.
And it's a very similar situation to Miss Johnson's where he could have made a better choice. Naja, it was, it was not his.
How do you, and we talk about better choices, Steph. What happened to de-escalation? Most of the people that have guns or have access to deadly weapons do not deserve the gun. Most private citizens don't actually need a gun. We get them to protect ourselves, our homes, our own spaces. But somebody is taking your bike, maybe let them take it. Take the damn bike. Somebody's trying to fight your baby daddy. Get your ass back in the car and protect your 5-month-old that's in the back seat.
I think you raise an excellent point, and I think this is really getting into your area of expertise. We as human beings are not necessarily trained to de-escalate. And I can my situation here. I've got, I was jumped in my building 3 weeks ago. Right by my squatters downstairs. They mentally ill. He's on drugs. Jumped me. I showed you my face. I was fucked up. I just show you the pictures. I got really enraged. And fought back. My instinct wasn't to try to de-escalate the situation. I Monday morning quarterbacked. What could I have done? To avoid this situation. So, I don't want people to think I'm talking outside of my ass. Like I've been in situations. So I think
you've had direct physical confrontation. Yeah. I think when I think about de-escalation, if somebody is invading your personal space and they are an immediate threat and you can't get away, then sometimes we have to physically fight our way out of that, which is what happened with you in that case.
Yeah. In
this particular instance that we're talking about, there's a car, a 2,000-pound piece of metal right here. You get your ass and sit in the seat and stay in there and let those two duke it out. Because your baby was more important than anything they haven't going on at this point. And I get it. For a living, I literally, for the last 10, 15 years, I've been helping people, co-parents in chaos. That is my job. That's what I do for a living. And so these cases are intensely emotional because you share a child. There's still unresolved feelings. There's a third party that's not been brought into the picture. So we have emotions that are high. If there's a word that's higher than high, emotions are through the roof. And in moments like this, the human ego is at play. Our very fragile, delicate egos,
Mhm.
our inability to control our impulses. And we as a society do not know how to resolve conflict peacefully. That should be something that we should teach in schools. How to
Yeah,
resolve
no,
conflict.
I agree with you.
How do I keep myself out of a fight?
Right.
Because Steph, we just want to go home, get in our beds at the end of the night. No, Ramika did not think when she was dropping her baby off at school that she would never see him again.
But
She
you know
had
what? And
plans for that day.
and again, I'm not bashing the victim at all, but I wished Romeca would have had the tools and the training to also understand de-escalation. There was three people in that
Yeah.
situation who could have de-escalated that.
Yeah.
Carlos, who to me holds the majority of the responsibility because he's the man and he's playing these two women, and but Romeca had a responsibility to de-escalate, and so did Miss Johnson. So again, I think it comes down to, I'm glad we're having this conversation. It's really your area of expertise, is can we have conversations around remove yourself from the situation, in
To
that
save
moment.
your life.
Right. I
Yeah.
would, because if Romeca had the tools, and I felt like from what I'd seen in her, she was incredibly upset and angry, and
Yeah.
she had a right to feel that way, but she didn't have someone like you. Like she didn't have, I felt like, the coaching or the guidance to work through
To
those.
say, girl, that man is not worth it.
Right.
I know
You
he
have
might
a
still be
child.
messing with you,
You have a
and he's
child in
messing with
school.
her.
Yeah.
Your
Yeah.
life is beautiful.
Yeah. Right.
Let her have your sloppy seconds. Let her have that man. And he ain't really even her man. He's everybody's man from what we understand, because we're seeing stories come out. And, it's like not putting blame on the deceased, on the victim, but anybody could have walked away.
Yeah.
She could have been like, oh my God, those two idiots, I'm leaving. I got a baby to think about.
Right.
And and we talk about that, but we are playing Monday morning quarterback. But if someone is watching this, I would compel you, if you are in a situation today, somebody steps on your shoes, somebody looks at you crazy, your goal is to get home, go have dinner with your loved ones, go have a drink tonight, lay in your bed and wake up tomorrow. I want you to stay focused on your goal. Anything else that a stranger says to you should not compel you so much that you're putting yourself in your life in harm's way. I wish Romeca would not have gotten out the car.
Mm-hmm.
I wish that she would have had skills to just know that it was not worth it. I don't know why Holly was there. Oh, and there's something else, Steph, that I see people bringing up. They say, well, why was Holly even at the school? Why was she? From the understanding that we have in several sources, they had stayed the weekend together, Holly, Carlos, and with their child, doing the family thing. There were 3 cars on the scene. We know Carlos's car was there, Romeca's car was there, and one car that's believed to be Holly's. Since Carlos lives a block away from the school, the shooting happened at 9:06. I think we said 9:30 previously, so I want to correct that. Shooting happened at 9:06. Romeca did see the two of them. She saw Carlos's car because she had to pass that way in order to get to where she was going. She made the U-turn and approached. That is something that we have found to be true.
Yeah, I mean,
that shooting did not happen in front of the school, y'all.
Mhm.
And I know people, it's hard to accept that fact. It happened closer to his home because, you can Google the address before you make the comments. Go and Google exactly where the shooting happened. So she approached, Steph.
Yeah,
And
but look, you know what? We can't change what happened. What I would like, because I'm a big believer in moving the conversation forward and attempting to. I would hope that Romeca's legacy can be de-escalation. Like her death won't be in vain if people will remember the situation, and if they find themselves in the situation, when I get heated, I call you. I have people to be like, you need to take it down, right? You get in that car, call a buddy, call a friend, call the police, remember the situation. And you're right. Like, it's not worth it. She had a life ahead of her. She had a beautiful child, and she could have fallen in love and, all this stuff.
She could have had a husband.
Right.
Her career looks booming. She was already just beautiful. She could have had her life to do whatever she wanted with, and she does not have that anymore. And I think that's what's so baffling to people. It's just so hard for us to wrap our heads around when we see cases like this. This did not have to happen. I wish we didn't have things like this to even talk about. I wish things like this did not happen in the world.
It didn't have to happen. And as I said earlier, and I know you want to wrap up, as I said, seeing the day of her repass or funeral, whatever you want to call it, and the beautiful
Yeah.
balloon release, and an individual involved in this releasing, videos unfavorable to the victim, to me is just unfathomable. It's just, it shows you the kind of character of an individual. And if there's an altercation between me, if me and you are pissed off about something and we're arguing, and
Right.
and you release that video of me, that's a fraction of my personality. So why are you?
It's 8 seconds.
Listen, you won, okay, buddy, you won. She's dead. You got the girl. Why are you continuing to bash her? What are you afraid of? Why are you making Romeca look bad? Especially on the day of her funeral. To me, it's just. You know what? It's just I don't.
I think attempts at character assassination to establish that, because it's obvious that one side wants to say that person was the aggressor. So the videos, and I won't be sharing those videos at all.
Yeah,
but I'm sure people. We've seen the video. We saw them before we were coming out. Said, I'm absolutely not sharing this. This woman is not here to say I was angry. It was reactive abuse. It was I was hurt. Like, whatever. She looked like a woman that was hurt. But those videos did not paint her and her personality in the best light. But we know that you release things like this when you're trying to vindicate what you did. You're trying to reconcile. See, hey,
or justify the actions of the individuals involved. Yeah. It was a terrible move, and look, it is what it is. But anyways, what? It's another sad day. Thanks for having me come on and talk about this, because I think it's always about the takeaway. What's the takeaway from producing a show? One of the crime shows I'm having, I'm always like, what's the takeaway from this? What can we learn? We can't go back and bring Romeca back, right? But maybe her son can grow up with a legacy of his mother, of she helped other people walk away. She helped. She was a moment in a Chicago crime is out of control. Maybe Romeca's legacy can be. I thought about it and I remembered what happened to Romeca, and I controlled myself. I don't know.
That is beautiful. She was a catalyst. She is a catalyst to change and reconciliation and de-escalation and conflict resolution. Look, that's a beautiful moment.
We need to heal. Like, this country's a mess. And Romeca was.
Say that again.
There's no attention. I think by us talking about it and everybody talking about it online,
we're going to keep talking about it because and I'll say this: Romeca's case has attention with Black folks. Like, we saw that girl in her last moments, and a couple of days later, a blogger, a podcaster was killed, a white nationalist, and the case seems to be dimmed in the media. But we are going to keep talking about this. Steph Watts, True Crime OG, thank you so much for joining us again.
I appreciate it.
Absolutely. There's a big media shakeup happening. ABC has indefinitely suspended Jimmy Kimmel Live after Jimmy Kimmel made remarks about a recent killing of a white nationalist. The show was pulled, and affiliates like Nexstar and Sinclair have dropped it. The chair of the FCC, who maybe not so coincidentally was appointed by this president's administration, criticized Kimmel's comments and pressured the network. Disney, ABC's parent company, is caught between political forces and free expression. Another major late-night show is also being taken off air. The Late Show with Stephen Colbert will end in May. And while networks cite creative refresh, many insiders see it as part of the same wave of quiet censorship. Several people have already lost their jobs. Matthew Dowd was fired from MSNBC after calling the unalived white nationalist divisive. Karen Attiah, a columnist at the Washington Post, was terminated after paraphrasing quotes of the deceased podcaster. Meanwhile, Brian Kilmeade over at Fox News suggested that unhoused people with mental illness should be executed or given lethal injections. He apologized, and he still has his job and his platform in that big-ass watermelon head. Celebrities are supporting Kimmel. Stephen Colbert, Jon Stewart, Seth Meyers, Jimmy Fallon, Wanda Sykes, Ben Stiller have all publicly condemned the suspension, calling it censorship and a threat to democratic norms. All over social media, people are canceling their Disney and Hulu subscriptions. And when they're prompted to tell why they're canceling, they're listing the reasons as fascism or just straight up saying, y'all know what you did to Jimmy Kimmel. Free speech is at stake. When shows get pulled, big creators are being shadow banned, people lose their jobs, and voices are getting silenced under pressure. Power shifts. Hosts and journalists are going to have to start self-censoring if they want to keep their jobs. Audiences are going to get fewer hard truths and more safe content, and only one narrative will get shown in the media. Propaganda will infiltrate our minds and thoughts and trains the mass populations to drink whatever flavored Kool-Aid the billionaires are serving at the moment. What can go wrong is really serious. Polarization deepens. Trust in the media and institutions erodes. Dissent gets sidelined. Democracy can't properly function if we can't speak freely, even when it's uncomfortable. Ultimately, this is not just about one host or one podcaster being unalived. It's about whether we still have a space to talk openly. When the rich white guys are losing their job for opposing this current administration, when rich white dudes are being shot down for preaching their brand of gospel, the trickle-down effect has already begun. The notion of free speech might only be a label, but it's not our reality anymore. And like that one rapper said, it ain't safe, it ain't safe, it ain't safe, it ain't safe. So are you going to start canceling your subscriptions? Thank you so much for watching this episode of Naja News. This is a self-produced, self-funded news outlet. So any like or share feedback, whether good or bad, is currency to me. I appreciate the support, and I will see you next time.